So this is my really good friend, Ben Coe. And Ben, we've been friends for a long time, but I want to introduce you and tell a little bit about yourself and how we know each other.
Well, let's see. I am uncertain of the year. However, I came across a photo from when we did that show at the Orpheum.
Yeah.
Things I remember about that day. Working with Steven. Steven was there on that one.
Hmm.
Um, Prepping those models like underneath the stage. That was a first and only. Never done that before with like my camping headlamp on my head and. Um, it was really cool because I think I was talking to Karen about it because Karen was there.
Hmm.
And but I mean, gosh, I don't even know when that was. And I mean, we go,
Yeah.
back
Longer than
beyond that. So, but I guess it kind of begins at Sassoon,
that. Hmm.
where you did your apprenticeship there. And I don't even know if I was the assistant creative director. I was definitely the acting assistant creative director. And then I was sort of like the acting creative director. And the title was always like a year or two behind, which I didn't care about.
Right.
But I guess it all goes back to Sassoon
Yep.
and your brother,
Yes, and my brother.
right? Who, I've spent time with him at the tattoo shop.
Right.
And yeah, so it's really that. And yeah, I mean, that's that. I think that's where we met.
Totally. And I,
But I mean, gosh, how many 1 degrees of separation do we have like every which way?
it's insane.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
really
yeah, tons.
like Phoenix is the biggest, smallest town. It
Yeah,
really is.
absolutely. Yeah,
Especially in the hair community too, and music and tattoo and all of that kind of like layers over on each other. And we have all these, like you said, 1 degree of separation. That show, as I remember, I was pregnant with Lucas.
yes,
It was like 2011.
yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's
sure.
crazy. And then yeah, before that, and I will say, going back to the start of it, all comes down to meeting at Sassoon. And I think we probably like unknowingly crossed paths. I don't even know how many times, most
I'm
likely
sure.
prior to that. But meeting you and getting a chance during my apprenticeship and that time there in that bubble, I mean, not only did I think we cultivated such an amazing friendship that I value to this day, but seriously, the inspiration that I try to continuously and probably obnoxiously remind you of how inspired you've made me through all these years and to date. So I'm forever and always grateful for what you provided for my craft. And I think I'm not the only one that feels that way. So you're
Oh
pretty.
wow. Well, I mean, I thank you, but so much of that goes to show the type of person that you are and everything that you've built from your home salon. I remember that room in your house
Right.
very well. I was actually extremely impressed. I'm like, you have a waiting area with like
It's a
magazines.
little tiny, yeah.
I mean, yeah, yeah. I had some pipe dream like maybe 20 years ago about building a home salon, and it would just be a chair in a room I wasn't using.
Listen, I'm the queen of do it to death. You know that.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. I remember, man. It was definitely Lucas's room, and I think it was before he even arrived. It was the closet.
Yeah.
It was like Y2K plus times two. I don't even know. I mean, there's stuff stacked to the ceiling there. Yeah, I remember.
All organized by like
Uh-huh.
month of like 0 to 3 and 3 to 6
Oh yeah.
and then
Oh
color
yeah.
coded. Yeah, I have problems. I know.
Hey, I don't think it's a problem. I think it's fantastic.
Listen, it is a hindrance in some ways, and it's really good at cultivating when it fits in that lane, right? Whether it's like, when it's used for good, it has its good purposes. It can be very
Absolutely.
troubling in other
Right.
avenues for sure.
Right.
It's funny, I was thinking about reminiscing. I was actually, prior to us doing this meeting, I was tidying up the house, and I laughed at myself as I'm like feverishly vacuuming the floor, and I'm like, I don't know how many times I vacuumed this floor this week, but it's something so like I can see the lines and it's so pretty. And I just like, it's like my Zen place in that moment of like, I'm just going to keep vacuuming because it's giving me such a joy because I don't have anything other than the space that I live in right now to like, I'm crafting on the carpet lines. But I remember the first time you came over to our house and Chet had made the comment, he goes, well, Ben, you must be really difficult to live with in terms of the neatness and orderly fashion that we like things. And you looked at him and you're like, what are you talking about? You live with one just like it with all the carpet lines in the
Well, to that point, you know what I was doing right before this was vacuuming the house. That's
Yes.
the last thing I did before I came outside.
I love it. Perfect.
It was unnecessary, but I saw like one little spot of like Lila's fur sitting on the ground. I'm like, time to vacuum.
You can't help it. You just you got to do it. That's how it goes.
Right. And actually that goes in a way right along with, you know, what you had sent me as your first question.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, you can get right to it because I mean, I think that speaks to, in a way, like I was actually thinking about that when you had sent me that, and I was like, well, I don't know, you know, I don't want to like think about what I'm going to say or, you know, what we might talk about. But as I was vacuuming again right before this, I realized like that's kind of part of it. But anyway, so I'll let you know.
I think you're right. I think that question is, you know, so what is the hardest part in this weird quarantine bubble that we're in, of not being in our normal day-to-day environment in the salon, and what that looks like? How are you dealing with that?
So that's kind of like twofold, because I think the idea of normal is no longer.
Yeah.
You know, there's no more normal. Like, you know, normal prior to like March of 2020, whatever that is, I don't think, in a way, I don't think it's possible for that to exist.
Yeah.
You know, it's this is such an odd point of reference. So Jenny and I have been watching a lot of movies. She has odd blank spots like in pop culture, especially regarding movies. And one of the movies, actually a series of films that we've watched, is Back to the Future. Right. So do you remember Doc Brown's explanation of the paradox with the chalkboard? Like how when you go back to a certain point, and like now there's this like diagonal tangent that goes off of, and now that's the line you live on, because that straight line that used to exist is no longer there. Well, we live in the tangent paradox from here on. Like, I mean, that's it. 2020 and what has happened has created that little blip, and it'll never go back to what it used to be, for, you know, so many reasons, socioeconomic, you know, so simple, maybe like point of reference, but like, let's say a restaurant that you really like to go to, I mean, they might have to shutter after this and they will cease to exist. Yeah. And that's that. And that's just how it's going to be. So, you know, it's multifaceted, I think, you know, with especially the socioeconomic. Okay, first of all, the most important thing is, you know, and as I know, like Chet is very aware, you know, the most important thing is the health and safety of everyone. Absolutely. You know, for sure. You know, it all goes back to like, you know, just got to make good decisions. Absolutely. But second to that, but a very close second is, you know, how does everything work, you know, after this? You know, so let's say that you know, and I'm just speaking completely hypothetically, but like May 1st, the country turns back on and everything goes back to normal. You know, that's impossible. So let's talk about our industry, right? I have spoken to clients who have said point blank, with zero hesitation, that they don't feel comfortable leaving the house until there's a viable vaccine available. Now, that's not going to be for a while. Right. So, you know, let's say that, like, you know, if you were, you know, 100% booked, right? Now, some people, some of us, yourself included, you know, might have an overcapacity client load. Well, let's just say that hypothetically we're all like, prior to March of 2020, we're sitting at 100%. Well, no one's going to come back at 100%. We're going to come back, I don't think, anywhere, maybe 50 would be like a very strong number. But I think that coming back in and around of like, you know, 30% would be like maybe a little bit more accurate.
Yeah.
And then like this slow sort, it's like turning on a really big machine, you just like flip a switch and the light turns on. It has to like get moving, and things, right. It has to pick up momentum. And everyone, and as I've been personally canceling my appointments as we go, because we don't really know what's happening. So week to week, I'm canceling appointments. And as I'm actually interacting with everyone individually, you know, and having conversations with everyone, it's really interesting to hear everyone's point of view, because it is a huge spectrum. It is completely, I don't want to say polarized, but if you were to take the edges of that spectrum, they are completely polarized. There's people who think that like this is a complete waste of time and we need to just get back to it. And then there's people who, again, won't leave their house until there's a vaccine available, and everything in between. So, that's just the truth of the matter. Now, I feel personally lucky in that, I don't live outside my means. That's not really something that I do. And I will admit this though, is yes, I did have like, the sort of like rainy day fund, but, just like how the US healthcare system wasn't quite prepared for this, I wasn't prepared for this either. Like I kept
the most prepared person I know. So that's
okay.
crazy.
So you know what I do with my extra money? I'll just tell you. It's like, I put it into like long-term things like retirement account, principal in the house. I didn't have like a stockpile of like liquid funds, like cash, just like sitting there ready to go. And if you need cash to like say pay, your taxes, you can't pay your taxes with a credit card. Right. So we're self-employed, right? So, you're a business owner. I'm essentially a business owner. I operate as an LLC as well as an independent contractor. So you can't just ring that up on your Visa.
No.
Like you need to send the IRS a check. And like, yes, you can defer and, apply for deferment and all, but I mean, that to me, that's just owing someone money. I generally don't like doing that. And, to make funds that were set aside for, long-term investments liquid again is not easy, because then, penalties and all this stuff. So the point is, I wasn't ready. I had no idea. I didn't really think about it. I was like, oh yeah, everything will be fine. And I was like, wait a minute. Not exactly, because I thought I was being so prepared by socking the money away in the long-term stuff, so, this is a lesson. That's the point, I guess, right? This is a lesson, I think, for all of us, right? And this is that point, like, this is the Doc Brown scenario, right? So that's that point.
That's such a good analogy. It's such a good analogy, because it's totally that like splinter tangent.
Right, and hopefully it doesn't turn into like Biff getting the almanac kind of thing,
Here's hoping.
Right? It doesn't turn into some like, post-apocalyptic like future, like dystopian future kind of thing. But like I said,
I'll hold my breath.
But I do feel, honestly, I know I am very lucky in that I am, I'm not in like an extremely distressed place, speaking candidly. I'm in a very mindful place, but distressed, no. They're in, I don't want to say it's like, okay, you think about what other people are dealing with, but there are lots and lots. It was a statistic actually from St. Vincent de Paul that there are so many people who live in our area who are one paycheck away from being sheltered at whatever facility and being fed at whatever facility and the food bank and so on and so forth. So I know that I'm very obviously very grateful to be in that place, but it is from a very mindful place, because we don't know what's going to happen. So in terms of handling and working through everything, it really is, I say week by week. That's kind of how I've been looking at it. When the weekend comes around, that's when I assess for the next week. I'm very fortunate that it's not like day to day, hour to hour, so on and so forth. But it definitely, we just have to take it as it comes.
And I think it's a good mindset to be able to like, I mean, this is like an elephant size like issue that we're all in. And so having that week to week approach kind of gives you that benchmark to be like, okay, so the next 7 days, this is my plan, whatever it is, and being present, staying in that moment. And then when that cutoff comes and then addressing the next week, I think is a really good way to tackle kind of an impossible scenario. And again,
Right.
like you said, you're doing that with your clients too. So you're touching in week to week. So kind of following suit with what you're asking of your clientele and asking that of yourself. And I think that's a really good approach to it, because it can feel very overwhelming, or it can feel like the minutes take forever. I've
Right.
heard both sides of that. Some of the other people that I've been in contact with have said, like, it's insane how long the days feel, but once you get to like the end of the week, you're like, how did that go by so fast? How are we this many weeks in? And it is
Right.
weird like conundrum of this, like, well, not a conundrum, but it's like this bubble of like time that's being lost so quickly, but yet it's dragging at the same time. So I think having a goal like that is really really important, and I think that's a good approach.
So, speaking to the point of the whole vacuuming scenario,
Hmm.
um, well, actually, so for one thing first, and I'm not sure if it was an Aesop fable, but it's definitely a fable of antiquated time. But it's the story of the ant and the grasshopper. Do you know what that is?
No, please share.
Okay, I'm going to paraphrase. I'm going to really shorten it, but so the year goes through, and there's an ant and a grasshopper, and the ant and his ant friends are just like working, and they're just like packing food away in their ant hill essentially, and the grasshopper is just like running around. It's summer, the sun's out, and he's like, "What are you guys doing? You're just like wasting your time, and you're working so hard for what? It's like beautiful out, and I'm just going to go have fun." And long and the short of it is, like, then winter comes, grasshoppers got no food, the ants have like everything socked away, they're good to go, and he's like going to freeze outside, so they invite him in, and yada yada yada. So the point of it is that is to never like kind of let your guard down, always be prepared for what might come. Okay, and this is where I go against kind of that in this scenario, right? It's to actually sort of live in that moment of enjoying what is happening right now, because the stuff that is happening that is not so positive, we have zero control over.
Yeah.
So, and it's the idea of like, change your mind, change your perspective, change your life, right?
Mhm.
Now, is it lying to yourself? To some degree, yes. And there's that fine line, right? You can be like, oh, everything's going to be fine, until like you get kicked out of your place, or your house gets foreclosed, or God forbid any of that stuff happens, but that's an extreme example.
Mhm.
But the other side of that is to be so overwhelmed by everything that's happening, and to be under the weight of all of that when there's really nothing you can do. Okay, so we work in an industry that is legally shut down, at least in like group settings. There's like individual personal care. That's like one of the Ducey's mandated, Governor Ducey's mandated essential businesses. So that's like this kind of gray area in a
Very.
way. But we're not operating in salons, right? So the business is shut down, and so there's nothing you can do about that anyway right now. You can find other avenues for income, hopefully, or and you can sit there and dwell on that all day long, or you can go vacuum the house, right? This is where it comes back to that, right? You and especially if you're like kind of a busy-minded person,
Yeah.
sometimes it's said in a lot of like, say, yogic and Buddhist and mindful practices, is to transcend all that by quieting the mind and doing all these things and letting all that go. But there's a certain positive quality of kind of feeding that motivation by just doing
Hmm.
and doing more and keeping yourself busy. and not just like sitting and thinking and like, what am I going to do? It's like, not what are you going to do, but like, what can you do? What can I do right now? What can I do like right now? I could vacuum the house. I could do some project that I thought about doing but have not yet done. And there's a lot going on that I think is emotional too. Yeah. There's a lot of tragic stuff happening in the world right now, socioeconomically, in terms of, obviously people are not surviving this, and people are ill. And so there's this idea of trauma, and what does that feel like? So the emotional component as well. Absolutely. But what can we, say you and I, or any individual out there, like, what can you do for yourself? And sometimes the best thing you can do is just kind of keep busy.
Yeah.
And be as productive as you can be. And, sometimes that satiates that, that human need for, a purpose. Yeah. And so for me, I have found that place to be very cathartic and very fulfilling. Like, and okay, yeah, so I don't want to say I'm like, am I lying to myself that like, making sure my yard looks great or the house is perfectly vacuumed or whatever is going to fix anything? It's not, but neither is sitting around like staring at the wall.
Absolutely.
And also, again, just not trying to, but like actually finding the best parts of everything in your environment. So for us, it's our weather right now.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm like hearing the birds chirping right where you're at, and the sun's like shining so pretty right there.
Yeah, I mean,
I love
this is just the backyard. I just walked out the back door and like put everything like right here in the middle of the yard. And so it's to be present in that place. Mm-hmm. And so you really are changing your perspective and changing your environment and changing, your entire outlook. And I find that to be kind of, it's there's been times, to be honest, where I'm like, okay, hold on, I got to do some math here. I got to crunch some numbers. What is, April going to look like? What is May going to look like? What is June going to look like? Because hypothetically, like, I mean, we could, be out, legally shuttered until, I don't know, mid-June. Yeah. I don't think that's unreasonable to say at this point.
As crazy as that is, but it's not unreasonable.
Right.
That concept is mind-blowing to me in that timeline, but I couldn't agree with you more. Like back in March when we actually closed, I'm like, okay, well, we'll see what 2 weeks looks like. And then those 2 weeks into, but to your point, like we really are going to be in that timeline of.
This is our new normal. That's the whole thing. And it's not even to say like new normal, because that is like with this expectation of something being different. This is normal. It's like not even like the new normal. New normal is like on the way. It's like, no, this is normal. Like, this is normal. This is just what it's going to be. And, we are so lucky to be living here and to have this weather. And, that's why Jenny, I mean, man, I feel like I've slept more nights outside than inside.
I love it. I love seeing your guys' posts on social and just like your 2 feet, the end of the truck, and just looks like gorgeous outdoor scenery, and just the two of you out there on your adventures. When I see those pictures, I'm like, oh my gosh, like it makes me so excited for you, and that you guys are just out there still, again, you're being productive, you're enjoying nature, you're enjoying each other's company, you're staying present in this bubble of craziness, but yet it looks completely normal. And it looks so, I don't know, loving and adventurous, and it makes me so happy when I see those posts that you do. So.
Oh, well, thanks. I mean, and it truly is what we're doing, lucky for us, this is what we enjoy. I was speaking to a friend of mine, and, his whole thing, his vacations are that, he always says this, that, my idea of a vacation is me sitting at a resort on a beach and someone bringing me drinks all day. And I tell him that, like, I go out to like the wilderness and I try and find like some place and he's just like, yeah, you can have all that. And, but so again, that's the gratitude part, is that like, we are in this place right now, climate, environment, and it falls inside of all the guidelines. I mean, we're going out to BLM land, which is, just pretty much open land, and just finding a flat spot to park the truck, and that's it. So, yeah, I mean, we're really lucky that it's conducive.
Yeah.
Right. And it works. So I guess, what it is that, like, each passing moment is kind of what you make of it. And we are choosing to do these things with these moments. And I individually am choosing to do, as, so I was saying week to week, but really it is moment to moment. I really sometimes will just be standing in my house like, now what? Well, as being, a personality type like that, you and I kind of are similar in that way. There's always something that can be done.
There's always something.
Oh yeah. Like that, I like to write everything on this whiteboard, and like my thing is just to wipe the whole thing clean. I'm just like, got it all done. Just like, it's just like, crossing them off. So it was it was Mark Carruth's birthday recently, and he and I were talking, and we're just talking about like just like crossing things off on the whiteboard, and like how that's like it's just so satisfying.
And, it totally is.
If that's such a satisfying thing, like this is your golden hour.
It's
like,
so good.
Yeah.
You should see, like, so with my productivity at home right now is all centered around having 2 small children at the house. I'm teacher, I'm mom, I'm provider to them in all aspects. And I've always been that, but it is all the time, all day now, and finding ways to keep them engaged, to keep their checklist going, and not have them want to like run out of the house screaming away from me by the end of the day, but
right.
We have this weekly assignment calendar that gets printed out, and it is no joke. We have one of those like fridge that is like the 2 doors, and it has a freezer on the bottom. So it's got the 2 doors, and it goes from the very top of the fridge all the way to the freezer. It is one long sheet, and it's every day what it is. So it is like the most glorious list to check off. And I think my kids, like, every time I just hang up the new sheet, they're like, oh man, come on, like, give me a break. But there's something really satisfying by the time Friday comes along for them. And I'm like, look at what you guys accomplished. Like, you did all of this. We've submitted everything online. We've done your tests. We've done this. And it is a very like rewarding experience for them, even though like it is kind of like pulling teeth in the moment. But to a degree, I feel like I'm teaching them in a very concentrated manner. I'm teaching them the value in that type of productivity. And like, yeah, you can do that at school, but like, is someone really watching you at school? Like, you're probably like floating by, and like, let's get down to it. Let me really teach you how to solve this equation, or to let's write a persuasive paper. And it's difficult, it's challenging, and it's fun. But at the same time, I think at the end of it all, like, they're really seeing the value in what that kind of list making and checking that off is. And that's what my purpose is right now, aside from cleaning baseboards and fans and all of that.
Sure. But no, but that, you know what, you're speaking, I think, exactly to the same point. And I think in a nutshell, we can just call this, so there's this like plethora of time, but like, sometimes, I mean, it's an old adage, but, it's like the devil makes work of idle hands. It's like, there is so much time right now. And it's like, the point is to like maximize that time. You and I maximize, I think, our time all the time. And, I heard this from someone. It was a client of mine, and this is many years ago, and she retired early. She retired, I think, in her 40s. And after she retired, she was, she would come in and be like, so what have you been up to? And it was just like so much stuff. And she said, I don't know how I had time to work before. And it's interesting that like, I get that. Like, I got it from like a very objective point of view then, but I feel it now.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't like, how did this stuff get done before I had like, you know, my entire workday to devote to maintaining the house? Like, how did the house not like fall apart? Like, I really don't understand. Like, it doesn't make any sense. But, you know, so that being said, it really is to maximize that time. But, you know, it is with the perspective of, you know, maintaining like that hierarchy of importance. You know, like what really, you know, you do need to like take care of certain things, and certain things do have to stay in the forefront of your mind and not just like slip away, because, you know, especially if you are like, you know, in our industry, then, you know, we're not on, you know, a paid vacation per se, especially if you are a self-employed stylist or a salon owner, that, you know, so, you know, speaking about like, say, Jay, right? You know, it's like, or yourself, you know, to be a business owner, it's like, you know, I have such a simple to-do list, really. You know, I don't have children. I'm not a business owner. I don't have employees. I can't fathom how I would even take that on right now. So, you know, kudos to you, kudos to him. Like, I just really, I mean, it's that's a lot. That really is.
It's definitely a different level of ownership, but at the same time, I mean, I still think it's all relative. Just to your exact point, what you were saying, like you just find the time to do it. You find the gumption to like, okay, we're gonna just be on this paddle boat all together, and we're all treading water, and there's holes all in it, but we're doing it. We're gonna get through it, and you just find that inner strength to do it for the greater good. Like Jay's, I mean, God love that man too. Like he's gonna do everything he can for you guys, for his whole team, for the business. And I know that we will do everything we possibly can to see this thing through, and whatever it takes. I mean, if I'm up till 4 a.m, then I'm up till 4 a.m, strategizing and making plans and finding a way, because there's always energy that I have that I want to put towards making sure that the lives that we have kind of rolled up underneath us are still taken care of. And it is hard though. And I think you touched on this earlier though, with saying about things that are in your control. And I kind of had this breaking point last week where it was like total meltdown out of worry for my team and worry for the business. And you have to hit that wall and then kind of pick yourself back up. And I decided, like, once I took that big deep breath, I'm like, you know what? I can only worry about the things that I can control. So I can find ways to work around this. I can find people who can help me apply for grants. I can find people that can help us with an SBA loan. I can find ways for us to be smart about what resources we have, how to find resources to keep things going. And I can control those things. So that's where I need to put that energy, instead of having that like, woe is me, this scenario is the worst thing I've ever experienced. Like, no, to hell with that. I can't control that, but these are the things that I can do. And there's endless energy that I have that I can put towards that. And it kind of kicked me right in the ass. I needed it.
Yeah. Well, you know, and actually, so there's one other thing. It's like, you know, how do you maintain as things are now so different? And, you know, we jokingly talked about this, you and I, about how, you know, Jenny and I, you know, we wake up before the sun comes up and we go to sleep when the sun goes down. And we call that the camping schedule, which it really is. But it actually isn't that far off from the normal schedule. My alarm still goes off at 4:45 in the morning, just like it always did, just like I was going to 6 a.m. yoga, which is not happening.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important component of it, is to stay inside of, like, you know, certain parameters. You know, don't just like let it all go and, like, you know, we're waking up at noon or whatever. I mean, I don't even know how to wake up at noon. I can't even fathom that. But
I don't think my back would move if I slept till noon. I'd be like one stiff board.
No, there's no way. So, but, you know, I think that's the really important component too. And, you know, again, this is just what it is. So, we wake up early, we do what we do, and that's it. Like we set up the yoga mats this morning outside, and we loaded up a class with our regular 6 a.m. teacher, and it wasn't Zoom, it was recorded because there's no 6 a.m. classes, but we practiced 6 a.m. yoga just like we always have. And it was just kind of like keeping in that normal, like sort of path or timeline of what's, what would normally be happening.
Yeah. It's good. It keeps you on that routine. I think physically, then all the things are set in the right way, then that you're not changing your normal day to day as much. And I think those like circadian rhythms are all set as they should be, and it does allow you to be the most productive and the most
Right.
healthy of mindsets, for sure.
Right.
I was going to ask you also, as far as, and then kind of just back to like talking more about industry stuff, but in terms of, from like an educator standpoint, what do you think you could offer for advice for some of like the younger stylists? Like I have apprentices that, are with, or an apprentice, and younger stylists that are still actively training right now, and that clearly that's stopping aside from what they're doing on their own. But you as like, my former educator and still, an amazing mentor, what advice do you have for people who are still young in their craft right now that kind of feel stunted? I mean, obviously we just talked about a lot of good mindset practices, but in terms of their craft, is there anything that you can think of that, would be beneficial to them?
Well, I think first of all, it goes back to that whole, we spoke for however long. I have no timer on this thing, or there might be one, but I can't see it. So we spoke for however long.
If we get cut off though, I'll have to resume you because there's limits on Zoom.
But we spoke for that function of time. In a nutshell, what we came up with is the idea of like maximizing your time and maximizing this time. And as and we kind of come from, and I'll just say it, we kind of come from like a little bit of like the old school in terms of like the philosophy. Yeah. And so what you're speaking to is like, what can you give someone? What can they hope to receive? It's really kind of like, what can you do for yourself with this time? The thing that has been given is the time. The thing that is on you now is to do with it what you choose to do with it. Now, especially it's 2020. Instagram obviously is what it is today. YouTube is what it is today. There is no shortage of information out there to expand on, your craft. And it's like, I'm sure that people's screen time is like shot through the roof. If you just look at like, like phone usage or device usage. But like, where are you in that place, percentage wise? It's like, the thing is, I feel like the percentage, the ratio of the usage, like let's say that you spend like, 80% of your time on meme accounts and 20% on like looking at like hair accounts. Right. Well, it's the same right now. It's just like graduated to a larger degree because now we have like, 12 hours of the day to spend on your phone. But it's the idea of shifting that into a place where it becomes more beneficial. I think it's a good time to, this is something that I did like when I was in cosmetology school, and I'm very glad I did do this. But, this is something I tell people too, when I was teaching classes, is that, it's dexterity based, right? It's like, how do you use your shears? How do you like, what do you do with your hands? And I would say, it's like, oh, how do you cut like that? How do you like flip the scissors down and cut like that? It's like, I would sit in front of the TV with some show on and just like do this like all day long and like do this and do this and do this. And like, also back then I thought it was really cool to flip my shears back and forth all the time. So I'd practice that too. Like
I used to do that too until you realized it's terrible on your wrist and stopped doing it.
Right. So it's like to just do that, to like just mimic the action and just to practice and practice and practice, where it becomes not even anything you think about and it just happens. And then when you apply that, it's like, it's done. Um, you know, I kind of often cite, it's like, you know, like playing the drums. It's like, you know, I can sit behind a drum kit and hammer out like a very rudimentary song, but, you know, I can play the drums kind of. It's like, oh, I didn't know you played the drums. It's like, well, I don't. It's like, well, how'd you learn? I was like, tapping on my steering wheel, like in the car.
Right.
I just knew what should be hit. Like I knew in my head, like, you know, right hand is hi-hat, left hand is snare. Like I just kind of, and I would just map it out. Like there's just so much you can do without actually cutting someone's hair.
Right.
Like you can just practice like dexterity based stuff like all day long, like literally now all day long if you want to. But, and again, yes, there is the idea that like this whole scenario, socioeconomically, financially, for so many, for all of us, really, no one's getting through this and like, you know, coming out like on the other end like, wow, I really did financially so well in like, you know, Q2 of 2020. Like unless you're, unless maybe you own stock in Zoom, right? Or you are right, something like that. But otherwise, you know, there's a lot going on, but it really is like, and that is kind of where the discipline comes in.
Yeah.
You know, and if you're not innately a disciplined person, that's where it's going to be an even steeper uphill.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, I have more important things to deal with right now. But, you know, dealing with things doesn't mean actually doing anything.
Exactly.
You know, dealing with things could just be like sitting under the weight of something and not actually doing anything. Now that sounds like very cold. Like, yes, there's a lot going on. It's not cool. There are people who are ill. There are people who are struggling like very poorly right now. But there are certain things that you can do. And one of them is just sit there and build that dexterity. You could, you know, if you can get your hands on a doll head, give that thing like 50 haircuts.
No.
Give it the same haircut until that haircut doesn't exist anymore. Like cut a line until that thing's a bob, and then start cutting graduation into it until it's like a short graduated haircut, and then start doing scissor over comb, and then start practicing with your clippers until the thing's bald, and then that's it. You know, it's just like what we used to do, like when we were in cosmetology school.
Yeah.
And, you know, but that's like kind of where the discipline part comes in. If, you know, for you and I, it's more like, we don't have to think about it. We just do stuff.
Yeah.
And which I'm also very grateful for, you know, just having that innate personality. But, you know, that's where one can be like ultra productive right now, is to focus on something like that. And, you know, it's hard, you know, I'm not discounting that, but that is the maximization of the time for sure.
Well, and I think that too, just having, you know, that good positive mindset too of these, you know, I'm just thinking about, again, those students who were at maybe like EVIT or in their cosmetology programs that they're not going to right now. And I'm sure that that weight feels very heavy for them. Like, well, I had this plan and now what? But I think to your point, like that dexterity is huge. I think finding the inner drive to push and look for what's out there, what resources can be found, and again, showing what you want on the other side of this and making the most out of it this when you have the time now, I think is huge. So I think those are great points. Those are great points.
So, you know, I just thought of something else too, you know, for some reason I didn't really think about the cosmetology level, but I think about when I was at that level and what did I do?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, man, if anyone would let me like blow dry their hair, it was like, let me do it. Like, just let me do it. Like, okay, yeah, you start, like, let's say you live in a home and maybe if you're with your parents or significant other or just like roommates, like, yeah, maybe not the best idea to just start giving everyone like repetitive haircuts until
that might escalate quickly.
Right. But unless they want that. But, you know, it's to say, like, let's say that it's you and one person, whoever that other person might be, right? Let's just say hypothetically, like you and I are roommates and we live in a house and it's 2020. This is what's happening. You don't want me to cut your hair. Fine. I'm not going to cut your hair. But like, I could blow dry your hair every day and I could do it, say, the way that I feel kind of proficient at. And then I could do it so many people cite like, they watch me like, blow dry, and they're like, you just blow dry so different. Why does it look so different? And I was like, what you're not noticing is that like I'm doing it with both hands.
Mm-hmm.
And like, oh, and like, yeah, like I blow dry the same left and right. I'm kind of ambidextrous with it. And that didn't, this is the first, okay, so when we got to cosmetology school, I already been cutting my friend's hair in my front yard for maybe like, a year or so. And so and I already bought that, Cutting Hair, the Vidal Sassoon Way book. And I was like already kind of mimicking what I was seeing in that.
Mm-hmm.
But when it came time to like, blow dry the mannequin head the first time in cosmetology school, I never blow dried anyone else's hair in my life. And again, I'm gonna cite, okay, so this is like 2003. Okay, so hopefully this doesn't sound archaic, but I was one of like 5 guys in cosmetology school. So I'm just gonna say that. And then when the girls all picked up the blow dryers, it's like they were stylists. Like they just knew what to do. Like they were just like fast with it, and they could just, and I was like, I don't understand. Like, I just don't understand what I'm doing.
Right.
But that's where the practice came in. And so it's like, you can find little avenues to like, practice and do these things. And even if you don't have anyone there, just like practice doing it, and then just like swap hands and practice doing it. And just, there are ways to do it. And it really is just the maximization of the time. And in the end, coming out of all this, like, you're just going to be like that much better, because again, the scope of everything that you and I do, like not even talking about any other industry, but things are going to be different for sure. And just from like, let's say a client base, right? So like your clientele, just like mine, I'm sure is extremely like dynamic and different and broad.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There's definitely going to be a percentage of our clientele who may or may not be able to continue seeing us because of socioeconomic reasons. And now that's going to shift kind of like everything around. And so I feel like for a stylist, you really just need to be like ready to come back into this. I don't want to say like with like a slightly more competitive like mindset, because that's not what it's about. It's not about competition, but it's about being the best that you can be. And really it's everything that we always talk about, but maybe when you start getting really kind of busy, you sort of forget, you fall into your your way of doing things, and you kind of forget that, like, that kind of hustle mentality of like, I'm going to do something like different. I'm going to like push that next level. And I am very curious to see where things land, when all this when things start moving again. And I really feel that, like, we all have to kind of just like do our best. I guess that's it, right? Isn't it do your best? Maybe that's the whole point of it. It's just do your best.
It is.
Maximize your time. That's part of it. Make the most of all of this. That's part of it. Be as happy as you can be, like right now, no matter what is happening. It's just like do your best, and then that's it. So if like you're about to make a decision with what you're going to do with, like, I don't know, at 5 o'clock, like do your best, whatever that means in that moment. Like do that thing.
Yeah.
And that's it.
I love it. And I think that in a nutshell, I think that's how you live your life always and regardless to whatever this is now. And I know that I try to do that as well. And I think that it's brought us a lot of really good aspects to our life by trying to do our best all the time. And I think that's a really good message to continue to like just spread the word, because people need to hear that right now. I think they do. And
not just for yourself.
Their best is good enough. Like if you know at the end of the day you just did everything you wholeheartedly could, you're doing damn good.
That's it. Yeah, it's not like do better, because you might not be able to achieve better. I hate to say it, but like, my idea of better is maybe something I see on Instagram. Like, okay, I'll just give you a for example. I was having this conversation with someone, Julius Caesar, right? He's been, doing this thing where he's like, giving everyone, or it seems like, this very sort of like very cropped buzz bleach. And he's like hand painting these like crazy designs in there. I cannot do that. So
Yeah.
if that is my idea of doing better, like, yeah, okay, maybe I could maximize my time and try and learn how to do that. But like me doing my best, I can't achieve that like right now. But like me doing my best might look like something else. But like, so everyone's best looks like something different, like across the board. But like, yeah, just do your best for yourself and even for other people. You know, it's like if someone needs help, you know, maybe offer that help. That's you doing your best. And you know, ultimately, you know, it's like the run on toilet paper. That is not people doing their best. That is that comes from a place of fear. That is, yeah, that is a whole other thing. Like, yeah, right. That is a whole other thing coming out in, you know, and but that's human. That's basic human psychology. You know, it's like Maslow's hierarchy. Like that goes back into like, you know, how we're like hardwired. It's like that's survival. So it's hard to supersede that and transcend that sometimes. But you know, if you just kind of fall back on like, am I doing my best right now? I think that's just that little perspective shift.
Well, I think you're doing your best. I know.
Oh, well, I mean, we're all doing what we can, right? The best that we can.
Good.
Yeah.
I want to ask you some pop-up questions. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So this is my thing, and it's not like hard trivia or something. So I won't ask you something ridiculous. It's all about you. Okay. So I want to know right now, what's your favorite quarantine food?
Oh, wow. Like a prepared meal or like a singular item?
I think just whatever you're either craving or you're making frequently.
Okay, so I'm going to keep it really simple because there's a singular item that I keep going back to, and it's Justin's honey peanut butter. Like I'll just.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I kind of went like 2020 toilet paper style on the Justin's honey peanut butter. We have so much of it. Like, yes, I left some for other people, but like I have a stockpile of that stuff because we're actually eating it that fast.
That's awesome.
And I will just grab a spoon and like and I'll just walk around the house with a spoon of peanut butter. So if there's one thing that I'm eating more than anything else right now, it's that.
I think that's your fast metabolism calling. You just want the peanut butter. Okay, your favorite animal?
Oh gosh. I mean,
LG.
Yeah, I mean it's got to be Lila, of course. Although spending time with Jenny's dog has been fun, but he's like a challenge, and that's what makes it fun. He's like got such like this sort of like irate personality that like if we can get him to do certain things, it's like get him to ride in the basket on the bike was like, oh my gosh, we did it. You know, things like that. So, but of course, it's actually it's Lila's 15th birthday tomorrow.
Oh, happy birthday, LG.
Yeah.
Oh, 15. She and Bruce, those old pups.
Uh-huh.
Bruce is rough right now. Oof, he's so rough.
Oh.
Poor guy. He's not
so
bad. What's your most played song during quarantine?
Gosh, you know what's funny? I was just talking to Jenny about this. It's inadvertent, and I don't know why it keeps coming up. And I cannot remember the artist, but it's that 70s song, Brandy. Do you know that song?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is
you know?
Not...
Brandy, You're a Fine Girl. You know that one with about the sailors and all that stuff? Like that song. Like total like 70s like yacht rock. I cannot remember who sang that song though, but I feel like we hear that song every time we go out, like on the way out and on the way back. Somehow it'll play on a Spotify playlist, and I really don't know how that happens because we're listening to all manners and genres of music.
And it keeps coming up.
Yeah, that and oddly kind of similar, but like this one is a little bit more intentional. Is the song? The title is "Escape" by Rupert Holmes, but most people know it as the Pina Colada song.
Oh,
also a 70s song. But which, by the way, it was not until recently that I finally. Have you ever listened to the lyrics of that song?
It's horrible.
It is so sketchy. It would be the equivalent of, say, like, you know, me and Jenny, right? And I'm kind of like, you know, I don't really like looking at her so much anymore. I'm gonna fire up Tinder right now and see how it goes. And it turned out she did the same thing, and we met each other at a bar somewhere. Right? Yeah. It's like that is the sketchiest, like.
It's
So that song keeps coming up too for some reason.
oh my god, that's hilarious. I like that.
Yeah.
The other one's by Looking Glass, Brandy or Fine Girl.
Yes, yeah, that's it. That's the one. That's the
I
one.
had
Yeah.
to Google it. Okay, so I know you've been on a ton of adventures, but what's your favorite adventure spot?
Man, so Joshua Tree was incredible. Okay, so Joshua Tree was closed, but we figured out a way to like walk into the park. So that was really cool. And camping out there was awesome. But we found an incredible spot near Tucson, near the Ironwood National Monument, which most people never heard of. But like, I mean, we were like in a forest of saguaros. It was amazing. So the last one was like the top.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, your favorite, this is more about craft, your favorite iconic haircut.
Oh man.
It's hard to pick.
You know, it's like my brain immediately goes to a Firefly. Christopher Brooker cut that. But I think it actually has to be the classic by the book, Graduated Bob. And I'll tell you why. It's because that was like the one I just couldn't crack. Like I just couldn't get it. I couldn't figure it out. I could fake it. I could fake it like kind of well. And, you know, truth be told, and I've told this to so many people, I might as well just say it out loud now. But like, I didn't cut it technically when I passed my test. I faked it. I just knew how to fake it.
Yeah.
Like, but to actually do it properly, I mean, yeah, that's so it's got to be that one.
I will say, and I know it's not my pop-up questions, but I just have to concur. It is totally my favorite, and for the exact same reason.
Yeah.
And you know that.
I don't think I could actually execute a technically correct Graduated Bob until 3 years after I qualified. Like it took me 3 years on my own of practicing just to actually get it.
It's so deceiving how like, and really because how popular it is of a haircut in general, and then it has so many like passable versions of it, but like the true technical nuts and bolts of it like is only executed by like a very small bubble of people. It's crazy.
Right.
I totally do. Where's your next off the grid trip?
It depends on you know where everything sits in terms of like, you know, traveling and, you know, sheltering and all that kind of thing. But we had discussed going up to Utah or going west until we hit the ocean.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Have you guys gone to like an ocean trip before, the two of you?
I mean, yeah, but not like, you know, just packing up in the truck and like camping. No, but yeah, I mean, definitely we've gone to, you know, to San Diego, La Jolla and all that. Sure.
But as far as truck adventures, that would be the first.
No. Yeah, I think that might be the next one.
Oh, that's awesome. I can't wait to see photos. So I wasn't sure if you've been doing movies or not, but you did already say that you've been on a movie kick. So obviously you checked off Back to the Future, but other movie recommendation?
Well, you know, a lot of it is revisiting certain classics, and how we're discovering them is oftentimes in conversation, just like as our conversation began, I'll cite some reference, like, you know, oh man, this is like that one time in that one. I'm kind of like Family Guy. You know how Family Guy, it's like, oh, this reminds me of that one time when so and so did that one thing. You know, I'm always like that. So that's how we're coming up with like this movie list. Is like in a conversation, I'll be like, oh, yeah, you know, like in Pulp Fiction when he like did this one, and then she, you know, Jenny will be like, I don't know, and she'll like have this blank look on her face, like, you've never seen Pulp Fiction? By the way, we just watched that.
Did she love it? Did she like?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I also cited it as one of like the 10 best movies ever made too, which I definitely believe that to be true. But yeah, so we've seen, it's a lot of classics and nothing really like new. However, we stumbled upon a movie called Tiger Tail. It's mostly in Chinese, so it's subtitled, but it was fantastic. I don't know if the relevance of that film has more to do with the fact that I'm Chinese and maybe culturally, but I just really thought it was a fantastic movie. Yeah. It's on Netflix.
Oh, it is. So Tiger Tail. Okay.
Tiger Tail. Yeah, I thought it was great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Check it out. That's awesome. I am so glad that we got a chance to do this because usually for people who don't really know you and we have this like group that we get to
Right.
have breakfast with, and they were usually having talks like this kind of, I mean, not as curated, it's more, organic, and we're just,
Well, I thought this was pretty organic,
I mean,
actually.
I don't mean
Yeah.
that it's like, I mean, I don't have like a list of 7 questions I normally
Sure.
ask you, but
Right.
no, for sure we have talks like this, usually over coffee and pancakes or, lunch hangouts with the kids and stuff. But it's really nice to be able to have a touch in that. This feels normal, and it's
Yeah.
great. It's really great.
I was very much looking forward to this. Like I said, I went out and bought a bottle of wine for this. So
Cheers, cheers.
yeah, cheers.
I put my White Claw in a fancy cup.
It's a White Claw. That's your wine.
I didn't want to open a bottle yet. It's early yet. I stay up later than you do.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. So right. Yeah. Because bedtime for me, as soon as like the sun goes down back there.
Jeopardy and then bed. Well, I'm so grateful for you as always, and
Likewise.
I'm grateful that we got a chance to do this, and I
Yep.
hope you say hello to Jenny, and you keep me posted on all of your adventures because I'm loving seeing them all. It's so great. So
Yeah, fantastic.
I think you're the best. Thank you so much. And
Yeah, thanks for doing this.